Yeah, clearly there's plenty for Brussels to be worried about here, despite her efforts to moderate her image in recent times. Throughout her career, she has been very aggressive toward the European Union, although now she's really softened that stance. She, of course, is not advocating for Italy to leave the EU or even the euro. She says she wants to work constructively with the EU. However, she envisions a very different model for the EU than, say, President Emmanuel Macron in France. She envisions an EU that is not any type of governing force, but actually a club of nations. So basically whittling away at the European Union from the inside, which is the same thing that her allies, her far-right allies in Poland and Hungary want. This is, of course, a really big deal for the EU. This is uncharted waters. This is the first far-right leader of any Western European country since the fall of Franco in Spain 50 years ago. How does the EU deal with that? That's going to be the big question. Now, we haven't had any official reaction yet because, of course, so far we just have the exit polls and the provisional result. But I have a feeling that we're going to see something similar to what we saw at the last election in 2018, when the populist five-star movement gained the most seats and was forming a government in Italy. They were a largely unknown entity, but certainly had said a lot of aggressive things about the EU during the campaign. However, we saw in that first week after the election, EU leaders were really trying to bring five-star on board and to not isolate them, to try to appeal to their most pro-EU factions or most pro-EU sentiments. I have a feeling that's what we're going to see with Meloni, because she, in a way, is an unknown entity. Of course, her far-right party has neo-fascist roots starting in 1946. The people around Mussolini formed this new party that she later joined. It's changed names 3 times since then. But she herself is seen as somewhat of a more moderate force, at least within the confines of the far right. The question is, was that all an act during the campaign, or is that really how she'll govern? EU leaders are going to hope, cross their fingers, that that is really how she'll govern, and I think they're going to try to say as nice things as possible about her today in order to not isolate her. But there is a big question about what she's going to do, especially in terms of the 200 billion euros that Italy is supposed to get in recovery funding. Italy is supposed to make reforms for that. She has promised to undo those promises of reform. The EU has said, absolutely not, you can't do that. That may be the first confrontation between Meloni and Brussels.
We shall see. Dave, I mean, let's face it, it's not necessarily a one-off, this, is it? I mean, we've had the Sweden Democrats earlier this month, again, moderating their tone, then coming to power. And the fear is, of course, that this could steamroll and there could be others as well.
Yeah, indeed. This is a trend we're seeing across Europe, these far-right parties with roots in fascism that trace their way all the way back to World War II. They have moderated their image. You have these new young leaders of these far-right parties appealing to voters, trying to put on a moderate face, but really the policies haven't changed dramatically. And of course, we saw that in the election in Sweden 2 weeks ago when the far-right Sweden Democrats were able to come second place. And of course, we saw Marine Le Pen, not exactly a new face, but certainly somebody who's trying to moderate the image of the Rassemblement National in France. We saw her get 41% in the French presidential election. So this is something that's happening across the EU, and it is, of course, of great worry. And I think in particular it's worrying to people in Brussels because it's happening in Western Europe. We, of course, have been dealing with far-right leaders in Eastern Europe for some time, but in Western Europe this is a new phenomenon, and that we're even seeing it in Spain, which for so long seemed like the one holdout, the one Spain and Portugal having no far-right party while it was rising in the rest of Western Europe. Well, now we have Vox in Spain, and they just had a big far-right conference in Madrid a couple months ago. So this is not an isolated case with Italy. This is something happening across Europe.
Dave, thanks very much. Dave Keating, our correspondent, talking to us live there from Brussels.